All right, let's dive into one of history's most iconic and, honestly, most cinematic clashes, the Battle of the Ice. Just picture it for a second. You've got these intense warrior monks facing off against a republic of merchants, and their armies are set up on a giant frozen lake way back in the 13th century. It's the stuff of legends. And this is the image that has defined the battle for nearly 800 years. It's pure medieval drama, right? You imagine this unstoppable force of heavily armored Teutonic Knights charging across the ice, only to have their greatest strength, their incredible weight, become their downfall as they plunge into the freezing water below. It's just an unforgettable, powerful scene. But here's the big question we have to ask. Did the battle really end with a lake swallowing an entire army of knights? Or is this incredible image more of a myth, a story that's been crafted and polished over the centuries for a totally different reason? Today, we're going to separate the cold, hard facts from the frozen fiction. Now, to really get what this battle was all about, you've got to understand who was fighting. This wasn't just some random skirmish. No, this was a violent collision of two completely different worlds, each one fighting for its very survival out there in the tough landscape of 13th century Eastern Europe. So first up, we have the Teutonic Order. And you gotta understand, these guys were a serious military machine. Think highly trained, super disciplined warrior monks, dressed in those famous white cloaks with a stark black cross on the chest. Their official mission, straight from the Pope, was to spread Catholicism. But let's be real, this religious mission was also perfectly blended with German expansionism. They were out to conquer new lands and lock down trade routes. They were, to put it mildly, a terrifying force. And their opponents? Well, they could not have been more different. The Republic of Novgorod wasn't a kingdom ruled by a king. It was this powerful, super wealthy merchant republic. And what's really fascinating is that it was run by something called a veche, basically a popular assembly where free citizens actually got a say in how things were run. When it came to war, they'd hire a prince, a military specialist, to come in and lead the defense of their trade-focused way of life. I mean, just look at the differences here. They're night and day. For the Teutonic Order, it was all about convert or conquer. Their ace in the hole was that heavy shock cavalry, and their go-to move was the pig's head, this terrifying tight wedge of horse and steel that was designed to just punch through an enemy line like an armored fist. But for Novgorod, it was defend and trade. Their strength wasn't raw power, it was brilliant leadership and the clever use of tactics like the ambush. This was way more than a border dispute, it was an ideological showdown just waiting to happen. And the fuse was finally lit in 1240. That's when the Knights captured the city of Pskov. Now, this wasn't just some minor win. This was a strategic dagger aimed right at the heart of Russian territory. For the people of Novgorod, this was a full-blown existential threat. They absolutely had to respond. And this is where our hero enters the picture. Facing this massive crisis, Novgorod calls back a young, brilliant prince they'd actually exiled earlier, Alexander Yaroslavich, a man who history would soon come to know as Alexander Nevsky. And Nevsky didn't just react to the threat, he totally masterminded the whole response. First, he gathers his forces and, just brilliantly, retakes Pskov. This forces the Knights to fall back. But he doesn't just let them go. He pursues them, hunts them down, and corners them on the frozen surface of Lake Peipus. And believe me, this was no accident. He chose this spot, this exact battlefield, to turn the Knights' biggest advantage, that unstoppable cavalry charge, into their biggest weakness. What he did next was pure tactical genius, a classic pincer's trap. So he puts his less experienced militia right in the center, making them look like a tempting, weak target, the bait. And just as he predicted, the Teutonic wedge charges, smashing right into them. But that was the plan all along. The Russian center gives ground, the Knights push forward, and just as their momentum starts to die down, Nevsky unleashes his secret weapon, his elite cavalry which he'd hidden on the flanks. They slam into the now exposed and totally vulnerable sides of the wedge. And just like that, the attackers are surrounded, trapped on the ice, caught in a chaotic, brutal fight they had no hope of winning. Okay, so Nevsky's trap was brilliant, and it's almost definitely why he won the battle. But that brings us right back to our central mystery, doesn't it? What about the legendary cracking ice? Let's take a look at the actual evidence. You know, when you look at the two most important accounts from that time, they tell pretty different stories. The Novgorodian Chronicle, which is the Russian source, does mention the ice breaking. But, and this is the key detail, it says it happened to soldiers who were fleeing after the main battle was already over. Meanwhile, the Livonian Rhymed Chronicle, the Teutonic source, fully admits they suffered a massive defeat, but says nothing at all about knights drowning as being the cause of it. So let's just weigh the possibilities here. On the one hand, you can see why the legend makes sense. It was early April, so the ice was probably thawing. A fully armored knight on his warhorse could easily weigh a ton. Imagine hundreds of them running for their lives, all funneling onto the same weakened spots of ice. It's plausible. But on the other hand, the arguments against are just as strong. We know for a fact that Nevsky's brilliant trap was the real tactical reason for the victory. And the story of the ice, well, it's just so perfect, so cinematic. It's easy to see how that could have been exaggerated over the years. So, what's the verdict? The legend of the ice shattering under the main Teutonic charge is most likely a dramatic exaggeration. It's far more probable that some of the fleeing knights did break through the ice during that chaotic retreat, but after they had already been completely beaten on the battlefield. The cracking ice was a terrifying result of their defeat, not the cause of it. But here's the thing. Even if you separate the myth from the reality, the Battle of the Ice is still one of the most important battles in European history. Its real legacy is actually even bigger and more profound than the legend. The victory had huge, immediate consequences. For one, it basically slammed the door shut on the Teutonic Order's expansion into Russian lands, for good. It secured Novgorod's future, its western border, and its identity as an Orthodox republic. It also turned Alexander Nevsky into a national hero, which gave him the political power he needed to deal with an even bigger threat, the Mongol Golden Horde. And the battle's meaning? It just kept growing and changing over time. Fast forward to 1938, the legendary director Sergei Eisenstein makes his masterpiece film Alexander Nevsky, and he deliberately portrays the Teutonic Knights as a chilling metaphor for Nazi Germany, cementing that dramatic legend for a whole new generation. Then, during World War II, Nevsky becomes this powerful Soviet propaganda symbol for resisting German invaders. And even today, the battle is a cornerstone of Russian national identity, a symbol of resilience against all odds. Which really leaves us with one final thought. The Battle of the Ice proves that sometimes the most powerful version of history isn't just about what happened, but about the story we choose to tell about what happened. It's an amazing reminder of how history is made not only on the battlefield, but in the tales a nation tells itself. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does a nation's history become its favorite story?